Hello everyone, my name is Purna Krishnamoorthy and I was co-counsel on the original trial that first brought Michael Jackson-Bolanos' name into headlines. We want to begin by thanking you all for coming today. We know that today is election day, but we believe the message we're asking you to hear is important enough to take a few minutes to listen to the facts. The reason we're holding this press conference is simple. For years, I have watched the narrative surrounding Michael Jackson-Bolanos' name be inaccurately portrayed. Today, we're here to clear up the facts, both about the history of this case and about where we stand now. Michael Jackson-Bolanos was initially arrested on December 10th of 2023 in connection with the investigation regarding Samantha Wall. He was ultimately charged with first-degree murder, felony murder, home invasion, and lying to a peace officer. In July of 2024, a jury convicted Michael on one count, and I want to be very clear of what that conviction was. Lying to a police officer regarding an investigation of larcenies from motor vehicles. Nothing related to Samantha Wall. The felony murder and home invasion charges were dismissed based on double jeopardy principles, and Michael was found not guilty of first-degree murder. That is an important fact, and it should not get lost in everything that has happened since. A jury heard the evidence, a jury deliberated, and a jury acquitted Michael of murder. If a person is presumed innocent until proven guilty, then surely they're innocent when proven not guilty. Yet the actions taken by the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office since that verdict raise serious questions about whether that verdict and the role of the jury in our justice system have truly been respected. Following Michael's conviction on lying to the police, the Michigan Department of Corrections prepared its sentencing recommendation. Instead, and over the objections of the defense, the trial court sentenced Michael to 18 months to 15 years in prison. The sentence was dramatically more severe than MDOC's recommendation for the offense, and quite frankly, extraordinarily unusual for this type of offense, particularly in Wayne County. It raised immediate concerns that Michael was continuing to suffer consequences connected to the allegations for which the jury had not convicted him. MDOC then took custody of Michael on August 15th of 2024, where he remains today. Michael first became eligible for parole on June 9th of 2025. His parole was denied in significant part because information contained within his pre-sentence investigation report. The problem was that the PSI was attributing points to Michael based on death, but Michael had not been convicted of causing anyone's death. So consider what that actually meant. Michael went to trial, accused of murder. A jury heard the evidence and found him not guilty. But when it came time for his parole, the same death was still being attributed to him and being used as a reason to keep him in prison. I'll say that again. He was found not guilty of causing a death, and then that same death was used to keep him incarcerated. An acquittal cannot mean one thing in a courtroom and something entirely different once the defendant reaches prison doors. Michael's appellate attorney, David Herskovic, fought to correct and ensure that Michael would have a fair opportunity at parole. After the issues involving Michael's pre-sentence investigation report were litigated in the Michigan Court of Appeals, David was successful in having the case sent back to the circuit court so the appropriate corrections could be made. Then, on April 28, 2026, Michael's parole grant was mailed. His scheduled release date was July 1st of 2026. Now, under the applicable court rules, Wayne County Prosecutor's Office had 28 days from the date of the mailing to decide whether to pursue an application for leave to appeal that parole decision. They let that deadline pass. Instead, at the last minute, the prosecutor's office sought emergency intervention to stop Michael's release. Michael did not receive their filing until approximately noon on June 30th of 2026, less than 24 hours before he was supposed to walk out of prison. And the filing itself presented additional procedural problems, including issues regarding the case and the judge before whom the matter was initially brought. His attorney was not given time to respond to the filing prior to his scheduled release on July 1st, in part due to the fact that they filed in the wrong court. Given the extraordinary amount of time, attention, and resources that the prosecutor's office has devoted to this case, those are not insignificant mistakes. And the consequence was very real. Michael remained incarcerated. MDOC ultimately moved his release date then to July 29th of 2026, and Michael's appellate parole attorney, Samantha Baker, stepped in and filed a response to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office on his behalf. And then, for the second time, an action by the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office stopped Michael's release at the 11th hour. On July 28th, at approximately 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon, again before Michael was scheduled to be released, he learned he would not be leaving. This time, the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office obtained a warrant arising from an incident that occurred in 2020. The Prosecutor's Office's own records show that the warrant request arising from that incident had previously been denied twice by prosecutors from their same office. And yet, coincidentally, 6 years later, this warrant was suddenly obtained immediately before Michael was scheduled to walk out of prison. So the obvious question was, why now? The prosecutor's office knew exactly where Michael was. They knew where he was when they arrested him on December 10th of 2023 and housed him in the Wayne County Jail. They knew where he was during the 5-week prosecution of his in 2024. They knew where he was when he entered MDOC custody on August 15th of 2024. And they certainly knew where he was when they sought emergency relief concerning his parole in June of 2026, because their own filings referenced this very 2020 incident. Michael was not hiding. He was not difficult to locate. He was quite literally sitting in prison in the custody of the state of Michigan. Yet this 2020 case sat for years. But then, immediately before his second scheduled release date, the prosecutor's office miraculously obtained this warrant. And this warrant stopped Michael from walking out of prison on July 29th. But now we have an extraordinary new development. Yesterday, August 3rd, at approximately 3:46 p.m., Michael's attorneys received an order seeking a dismissal of this very same 2020 case. And I want everyone to understand who's asking for this dismissal. The Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. The same office that obtained the warrant in an effort to prevent Michael from being released in the first place, now signed an order asking that the case be dismissed. And the reason, written on their document, in the interest of justice. So now the question of why now has taken on an entirely different significance. If dismissing this prosecution is in the interest of justice today, what changed between July 28th and August 3rd? What changed in 6 days? What evidence changed? What facts changed? Because we know one thing that did change. Michael was supposed to walk out of prison on July 29th, and he didn't. So look at the sequence. The incident occurred in 2020. 2 warrants were denied by the prosecutor's office in 2020. The prosecutor's office has known where Michael has been for years. They knew he was scheduled to be paroled on July 29th, and then immediately before his release on the 28th, they obtained the warrant. And that warrant effectively stopped his release. And now, less than 1 week later, that same prosecutor's office is asking that the case be dismissed in the interest of justice. Those are not conclusions, those are facts. And the public is entitled to ask what those facts mean. When you look at the history of this as a whole, this is no longer about one isolated filing, one procedural mistake, or one unfortunate coincidence. There is a pattern. The pattern the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office of continuously attempting to impose their will despite that justice has already been administered in this case, and that is deeply troubling. These circumstances raise serious questions about whether the criminal process is being used for legitimate prosecutorial purposes or whether it is a means of preventing Michael's release after the parole board determined that he should be paroled. A prosecutor's role is not to achieve a particular outcome at any cost. Our system entrusts decisions to different institutions. The jury decides guilt, the courts apply law, the parole board determines whether an eligible individual should be paroled. And here, the parole board determined Michael is an eligible individual and he should be paroled. Justice is not defined by whether the prosecutor's office gets the outcome it wants. Justice is defined by whether the law and the process are respected, even when the outcome is one that the government doesn't like. These circumstances also give rise to serious questions regarding Michael's constitutional rights and potential claims arising from malicious prosecution, false imprisonment, and other governmental conduct. And those questions deserve answers too. The sheer egregiousness of what we have witnessed in this case should concern every one of us, because if rules can be manipulated, the decisions of a jury can be undermined, and the power of a government can be repeatedly used to prevent one person from regaining his freedom, then none of us should be comfortable assuming that it couldn't happen to us next. Any one of us could become Michael Jackson-Bolanos. And that is why, ultimately, this is bigger than Michael Jackson-Bolanos. This is about whether we are willing to demand that the government follow the same rules that it is entrusted to enforce. It is about whether a jury's verdict means what it says. And it is about what happens when an enormous power entrusted to the prosecutor's office is used without meaningful restraint. And I want to make another point very clear. There may be continued litigation involving charges that were dismissed. The prosecutor's office has legal avenues available to it if it believes that they're entitled to pursue those matters. But there are laws, appellate procedures, and constitutional protections that govern how those disputes are resolved. But litigation cannot become a substitute to incarcerate. Those matters must proceed through the legal processes established for resolving them. Michael's parole is a separate matter. He became eligible for parole on the sentence he is actually serving, and the parole board determined he should be released. Michael cannot be kept incarcerated as though he is serving a sentence for charges he was not convicted of. So at some point, we have to ask, what exactly is keeping Michael Jackson-Bolanos in prison? His first parole eligibility date of June 9th, 2025 has come and gone. His second scheduled July 1st, 2026 release date has come and gone. His third scheduled July 29th, 2026 release date has come and gone. And again, less than 1 week after that third scheduled release date was stopped by the 2020 warrant of the prosecutor's office, that same office is now asking that the case be dismissed in the interest of justice. Yet Michael still remains incarcerated. Every time Michael has reached those prison doors, another action taken by their office has prevented him from walking through it. How many times can that happen before the timing itself demands an explanation? A not guilty verdict cannot mean not guilty unless the government finds another way to continue to punish you. That is not how our system is supposed to work. Michael has done everything required of him. He went to trial. He faced his accusers. A jury heard the evidence. He was found not guilty of murder. He served beyond his minimum sentence. He became eligible for parole, and the parole board determined that he should be released. Yet today, August 4th, 2026, Michael Jackson-Bolanos is still sitting in prison. At some point, this has to stop being explained away as procedure, timing, or sheer coincidence. The government has tremendous power. With that power comes equally tremendous obligation to use it fairly, lawfully, and for the pursuit of justice, not simply for the pursuit of a particular outcome. And when that power keeps standing between a man and the freedom our legal system has determined that he should have, the public has every right to demand an explanation. And we are demanding that explanation today. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Michael's current attorney, Mr. Austin Gregory. Thank you.
I'm only his current attorney for a couple more days until this dismissal actually comes through. But the biggest thing I want us to know is that this charge was bogus from the beginning. It started with him being the passenger in a car, and somehow he's resisting arrest. They don't even have reasons to talk to him. And that is why it was denied the first two times. And honestly, it was denied again on the date of the warrant, on the date of July 24th and 2026. They rejected it first, and then they put it. And to harp on some of the things that Attorney Krishnamoorthy was saying, the timeline for the interest of justice was 5 years and 354 days ago. It was not 6 years at the point that you've already filed something, and now we have to deal with the fact that Michael Jackson-Bolanos is still in prison. Because just like the prosecutor's office wanted, they've appealed his parole and kept him in prison every single time. So again, eligibility does not matter to them because they've done something underhanded and nefarious in this case to keep him in prison, which is filing a charge that they knew they were gonna have to dismiss. And I don't want the public to think that they just did it because it somehow got up to the head of the prosecutor's office. No. There were requests for discovery. There was a motion filed that said you need to show why you waited 6 years, almost to the minute. 6 years to the minute to file these charges when you had the person in custody 6 years ago. And then when you had the person in custody 3 years ago, then when you had the person in custody for the entire time. Now, I don't have too much to say about it because until that dismissal actually becomes official, I don't want to get too far into the details. But please understand that what they've done goes far beyond what they're supposed to be doing. Their job is just to be a prosecutor and to know when something is worth going and pressing charges for or going to court for. They found that this was not for 6 years or 5 years, 364 days. Really 365 because there's a leap year in there, but it doesn't really matter. 5 years, 365 days, they just said, let's do the right thing. But on that last day, they chose to do the wrong thing. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can we clear up a little bit what's next for Michael Jackson-Bolanos? Like, is he set to be released again? Like, what's?
So as we understand, we saw that there was a statement made by the prosecutor's office indicating that his release date is August 26th. That is not the information that we have. Once they got his parole effectively suspended, he was sent another parole document indicating that he has a parole interview scheduled for August 26th. So that I don't believe that their information is accurate yet again.
And again, I don't think there's any reason to believe any of these dates because we don't know if they're gonna do something else that keeps him in prison, like they've done the previous 2 times. So.
And then additional follow-up, do you have kind of like a bullet point timeline of what happened?
Yes, so there is a press conference kit that you guys will all have access to, and that will have a timeline of events in it.
Okay, that would be really helpful.
Yes.
So Kim Worthy's office said that the case was dismissed, this most recent case was dismissed because she didn't know about these charges, and policy was that she would approve any high-profile charges. Do you believe that?
Well, go ahead. I'll follow up.
I simply don't. She did, 3 press conferences? Prior to this?
Like in the.
There was honestly press coverage for his arraignment for this case.
Right.
It has to go through some form of special way to look at it, I would hope anyway, because it was a 6-year-old case. And I don't mean 6-year-old a little bit, I mean literally 6 years old. And the last date is statute of limitations. You have to be getting some form of approval to be able to do something like that.
And if I may add on to that, with the stay of parole that they filed, they made reference to this 2020 case. That stay of parole, I'm sure Kim Worthy had looked at and had knowledge of. So the fact of the day that that statute of limitations was going to run and this warrant was obtained by their office, again, everything cannot be cleared up by sheer coincidence. We can't just push everything under the rug and act like, oh, nobody knew. This was an extremely high-profile case. There was extreme amounts of resources that were put into this case. I find it unbelievable that their office wouldn't be keeping tabs on every movement made in this case at all times.
So with this dismissal, obviously your concerns about whether or not he's actually going to be paroled are still very prevalent. You know, what steps do you think need to be taken in terms of accountability, and do you consider the prosecutor's office's action misconduct?
I do. And again, I'm not a practicing civil attorney, so I can't speak too much to that, but I know I've spoken to several other attorneys, and based on a consensus, it sounds like there has been misconduct here. And again, I don't want to make that claim without being able to substantiate it. That's not my field, but it feels like it. My gut feels like it, but well, I don't know.
And also look at some of the things that Attorney Krishnamoorthy said in terms of their actions. They filed something in the wrong court with the wrong judge. They're the prosecutor's office. And they're trying to appeal parole decisions. That's also not what they're supposed to be doing. This feels like they're just stepping completely over lines that are in place for a reason.
So if, when you're looking at this, it's feeling like it's an overreach. What do you think needs to happen to the people, responsible for keeping your client in prison?
I think that's an answer that can really, or a question I should say, that can only really be answered once he comes out and speaks to the people that would be able to navigate him in that direction. He has a wonderful set of attorneys right now. Like I said, he's got David Herskovic, Samantha Baker, and Austin Gregory. They're guiding him in the best way possible. And I think that once he is ultimately released, I would be hard pressed to think there's not going to be a lot of other attorneys that are going to be very interested in looking into the intricacies of this, because there are far too many.
What would you say to the victim, Samantha Wall's family, who still maintain, and they seem to be very confident that Michael Jackson-Bolanos was the suspect despite the jury's verdict?
My deepest sympathies go out to Samantha Wall and or Samantha Wall's family, I should say. However, the evidence in this case is the evidence, and in order for us as a society to maintain the trust that we have in the system and the democracy of the system that we use jury trials for a reason. They're allowed to have whatever feeling they want, right? Like, I can't speak to that feeling specifically. I don't want to speak to that head on, because they're going through a pain that is not mine to speak on. However, having been the original trial attorney on this case, having looked at all of the evidence and having understood the way that the trial proceeded, I know that he's innocent. And I feel bad for them that they lost a family member. That is incredibly tragic. However, I can't say it enough times to make someone believe it. He's not the person responsible for her death. It's just that simple. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you all for attending. And like I said, the press conference kits should be available through, is it the QR code or?
It's all held in Google Drive, and it has been emailed to you all as of right now.
Perfect. So you guys should all have that. And thank you all again for attending. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.